So let's just jump right into this. We have this idea of art, right? We think of it as a finished thing, a product, and the artist is the one who made it. Simple. But what if that whole way of thinking is wrong? What if the artwork itself could, take on a life of its own? And maybe even start to create?
I want you to imagine a poem, but not one that just sits there on the page. Imagine a poem that actually grows, like a tree, a single piece of writing that just keeps expanding into this whole universe that you can actually explore. Now, this isn't some sci-fi fantasy. It's the idea behind what's called a fractal poem, and it completely flips our whole understanding of how we interact with art.
Okay, so how does that even work? How do you take one poem and turn it into a living, breathing world you can get lost in? Well, the principle behind it is actually surprisingly simple, but the results are just incredibly powerful.
The basic idea is just beautiful in its simplicity. You start with one core poem, let's say Apollinaire's Nuit Renan, so that's the trunk of our tree. Then, every single line in that poem sprouts into a brand new branch, and from each of those branches, a totally new poem blossoms, using that original line as its creative seed. And this process, it can just keep going and going and going, theoretically, forever.
The scale of this is just mind-bending. Since that poem has 13 lines, every single cycle multiplies the number of possible new poems by 13. I mean, after just a couple of steps, you're talking about a forest with thousands, then millions of interconnected poems. It becomes this truly infinite world of text, which leads to a pretty big question. How could one person possibly explore something that vast?
And this is exactly where AI enters the picture. See, a human on their own could only ever map out a tiny little corner of this poetic universe. But when you collaborate with an AI, suddenly you can navigate these incredible depths. You can generate and connect poems at a scale that was just unimaginable before. We become these co-explorers, venturing into this huge creative landscape together.
This partnership between human and AI completely transforms the artwork. It's no longer a static thing you just look at from a distance. It becomes this dynamic, living ecosystem that you actually enter and interact with. And that right there is a massive paradigm shift in how we even think about what art is.
So you're not just a reader anymore, passively taking in words. You become a traveler. You're charting your own course through this branching world of meaning. Every decision you make, every path you decide to follow creates an experience that's totally unique to you.
And the act of creating, that changes too. It's less like building something, brick by brick, and it's much more like planting a garden. You're not making a final finished object. You're sowing seeds of potential that can grow and blossom in all these unpredictable and beautiful ways. And here's the really crucial point. The artwork itself turns into a space for discovery. It becomes this kind of metaphysical playground where you can explore ideas and connections and possibilities that are literally emerging from the system itself. This all points to a really strange relationship the artwork has with time. It doesn't just move forward in a straight line. As new poems are created, they actually redefine the potential of that original seed poem. It's like the work is constantly inventing its own past at the same time it's growing its future.
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to that big question we started with. If the art is always growing, always evolving, and generating new work from within itself, well, what does that mean for the person who started it all? Who's the artist?
No, really, think about it. When the artwork itself becomes the engine of creation, it's the seed that sprouts into an entire ecosystem. Our old-school definition of authorship just starts to fall apart. Who is the real creator here?
This idea actually connects really deeply with the philosopher Henri Bergson's concept of duration. For Bergson, creation wasn't a single event. It was a continuous flowing process where reality is constantly inventing itself. And this fractal poem, it's like the perfect artistic expression of that exact philosophy.
So, if the artwork is this living process, then the artist's role has to change too. They're no longer the master builder, imposing their will on the material. They have to become something else entirely. And this is the key. This is the big insight. The artist's genius isn't in crafting the one final thing, but in designing the fertile system where countless things can emerge. They go from being a manufacturer to being an architect of pure possibility.
This just changes everything about how we see the creative act. The artist isn't painting one perfect branch anymore. They're designing the DNA for an entire forest. They become the architect of a living, poetic world. Their genius is in the rules of growth, not in any single individual leaf. And this new role, it demands a totally different mindset, a kind of paradoxical wisdom. It teaches us that art is a process, not a product. That meaning isn't something that's just given to you. It's something you discover and gather along your journey. It requires patience and listening and this real humility to become a partner with the creative process, instead of trying to be its master.
And so we're left with this one last really powerful question. What if we just stopped thinking of art as a bunch of static objects in a museum and started seeing it as a living, evolving ecology of meaning? A system that we don't just consume, but one we inhabit, we cultivate, and we grow with. What does that future even look like?